Hey, I'm Sean. I host a podcast here at Vox. It's called The Gray Area. Every week, a guest comes on my show and we talk about a question or a topic through the lens of philosophy. You may have seen clips of recent episodes here on the YouTube channel. This, by the way, is just one of a few podcasts here at Vox. I hope you check them out too. The clip you're about to see is from my latest episode with my Vox colleague and reporter, Zack Beauchamp. He covers conservatism and the state of democracy around the world. Zack and I talk about the recent election, obviously. We talk about Trump's undeniable appeal in this moment and what that might mean for our political future. I hope you enjoy it. So we can make the case that Trumpism is a reactionary movement, but what is Trumpism really reacting against? What it seems to be increasingly is a rejection of the ruling elites, a rejection of the professional managerial class, which is more about class and culture than race and the preservation of traditional hierarchies. So how do you make sense of that?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of analytic slippage going on in that account, and I think we need to be really careful when we talk about.
That's the classiest way someone just called me wrong, by the way.
I didn't know you were
slippage there, sir.
There's a little bit of slippage.
Many people are saying,
Sean. Many people are saying that. That's actually true. They're just wrong. They're wrong in, I think, an important sense, but right in another one. But let's start with wrong. Right? Is when we talk about what Trumpism is, we need to specify what we're talking about. And I don't think looking at a general election and saying that person voted for Trump is necessarily to say that person is a Trumpist. If you look at Trump's core supporters, though, the story of racial and social grievance, right? Anger about immigration, a kind of sense of alienation from the United States after Obama really personalized the changing social order. All of that is remarkably consistent among the people who will turn out to vote for Trump in a Republican primary. Right? It's been true over and over again. The evidence is overwhelmingly strong that this is their core motivation in Trump politics, right? And in being engaged in this movement. And nothing about this election result changes that, right? What that part of the story does is help us understand why Trump has gained control over one of our two major political parties.
Yeah. And I just continue to have a hard time parsing out all the forces that are combining to scramble our politics. I mean, there's so much alienation. It's a very lonely society. Our democracy doesn't feel very participatory for lots of people, so there's not enough investment in it. I think social media fragmentation more generally, the collapse of consensus reality, it's all been very destabilizing. And I'm just going to keep saying that I think millions of people have never experienced real political disorder. I think they take liberal democracy for granted and frankly don't take politics very seriously. It is a reality TV show and they're entertained by Trump and they think he's funny and he'll make eggs a little cheaper and also drive coastal elites insane. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true for a lot of people, right? Like
a lot of people,
especially that point about taking liberal democracy for granted is so important. I think it's that when you live in a political order for a long period of time, you just came to take it as like a baseline. This is the way that things are, right? And it's not that you can't even envision fundamental change. It's that you don't even have the vocabulary necessary or the sense of perspective necessary to believe that you should be envisioning radical change. It just doesn't enter into your daily life, right? If you look at interviews with swing voters and the way that they talk about politics, or talk to them yourselves, right? The sense that you get is not that these people are like, I want to burn American democracy to the ground. It's that they've got a choice between two candidates, like they do every election, and they pick the one who represents whatever their grievances are at this moment in time, or whatever their anger or frustration or even hopes and dreams are at this moment in time. And lots of different things go into, for a voter that changes their mind election to election, what speaks to that. And the stuff about who Trump really is and what he really stands for, the system threatening part of it, it just doesn't even register, right? Because it seems too remote to feel real.
Not just remote, it also feels, I think we've talked about this a little bit, it feels a little too silly and absurd often, right? I mean, figuring out how to situate Trump in this story has always been weird for me. I think he's too nihilistic to be the leader of anything other than a personality cult. But the question, I guess, for you is, has he become more like a vehicle that serious ideological reactionaries are using to advance their serious political project?
I mean, I'm going to say yes and no. So yes, in the sense that Trump does not have the mind for detailed policy work, right? It's just not what he cares about. It's not.
That's
right?
charitable.
He's not, he doesn't want to like try to understand how something like Schedule F is going to work. He's not going to be in the details going through staff directories. He doesn't really know how the federal government relates to local prosecutors and what the authority is to punish the people who went after him, but he wants to do it, right? And he wants someone to figure out how to do it. And that's like the stuff that he's immediately concerned with. And there's the stuff that's relatively far afield. Like, do you think Trump really has a sense of what the Department of Labor does, right? Or cares?
Absolutely not.
No, he's no sense, right? And will just do whatever people around him, I know the last person he talked to suggested that he does, or the last person that he liked that he talked to. So in that sense, yeah, a lot of what happens in Trump administrations, now that we have to use the plural, is going to be determined by the political world around him. And I also don't think he has like a sincere commitment to anti-democracy either. He's not ideological in that sense. He's not the kind of guy who has he would never write a book where he lays out a coherent political ideology that he sincerely believes. Right. He puts forward.
But Zach, this is my problem with him, right? Like, he's not committed to anything. I have always felt that his political genius consists in making himself into an avatar onto which people can project whatever they need to project. And he's just so well equipped to be this kind of vehicle that I'm talking about. Because again, I genuinely do not think he cares about anything other than himself. I mean, if the man had to choose between preserving liberal democracy for another century or building a beautiful new golf course in Saudi Arabia, is there any doubt he'd build the fucking golf course? No. I mean, that's his level of commitment to democracy.
No, but I think that's a mistake, right? Because it's not that he doesn't have a commitment to democracy in the sense of he's not attached to it. He doesn't like it, right? He doesn't like the idea that he can't do whatever he wants when he gets power, right? He gets very angry when people say you can't do that or that's illegal. And he openly admires leaders in other countries who have either, always been authoritarians, like Xi Jinping in China, or who have torn down their own democracies, like Putin or Viktor Orban in Hungary. He thinks that they're strong and that it's great that they get to do stuff like that. And again, this is not an ideological commitment to authoritarianism either. It's not like Trump has a sincere belief that authoritarian systems work better or deliver better in some kind of meaningful sense. It's a gut level, I like that. I want to be like that. It's when he said, in that interview, in those comments that were recently reported, I want generals like Hitler's generals. It's not like he was saying, I want generals who will follow my orders to exterminate the Jews. He's saying, I want people who listen to me and do the things that I say, whatever those things are, however crazy they might seem. And in that sense, he has a gut level authoritarianism. It's not and it's reactionary in the sense that he very clearly hates a lot of the social change that has happened, right? So he does really classically fit the pattern I describe in the book. But it's not because he, unlike someone like, say, Orban or Narendra Modi in India or Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, like all of them have complex ideological beliefs. Orban's are mostly for show, by the way. He mostly cares about power, but he's a very sophisticated ideological operator. And Netanyahu and Modi are for real ideologues. Like they really do believe a lot of what they're saying.
I think that's more what I was speaking to. It's clear that
Yeah.
Trump wants power. It's just not clear to me what he really wants to do with it. It's not clear to me what it will be in service of.
Yeah, I mean, there are two things, right? Like two
Other than
things I
himself.
think he does care about, right? He does believe that we need to get the immigrants out of our country. He really does believe that. And it's been true for decades in his statements, consistent. It's one thing he's been consistent on. And the second, he believes that free trade is bad for America. It's a really fixed belief for him. It's unchangeable. No amount of evidence could cause him to change his mind on this topic. The only question is how far he's willing to go in pursuing an anti-trade agenda. And those two things, right? They reflect a deeper worldview, I think, a sense of the world as a fundamentally zero-sum place, where it can't be the case that migrants coming to the U.S. is good for native-born citizens, right? Someone has to win and someone has to lose. It can't be the case that both countries involved in a trading arrangement benefit. Someone has to get the better of the deal that's being made between the two sides, right? And so that like sort of constellation of instincts, the zero-sumness of it all, filters down into perspectives on different policy issues. But it's not in the same way as somebody who has, a doctrine, right? A set of like propositions that they believe about the world that have been applied to different cases, right? It's just he has sort of feelings about stuff. And the feelings about stuff translates into some relatively stable policy views and some areas where he doesn't really think that much or care that much about it. Right. And when he doesn't care, he is willing to be protean in the way that you described, to like just change his mind on abortion whenever he feels like it and whatever the audience is, and say wildly different contradictory stuff, depending on what feels like in his interest at that moment in time.
Yeah, I think it's clear he certainly has instincts, and I think those instincts can be properly called authoritarian. Thank you so much for watching. Like I mentioned earlier, Vox is more than a YouTube channel. We have a website, podcasts, newsletters, all of which is devoted to this singular task of explaining the world. And if you enjoyed this, and of course you did, you're still here, there's a ton more to discover. If you're already a fan of Vox and you want to support the work that we do, the best way is to become a Vox member. It'll give you access to some exclusive podcasts, newsletters, and videos. And more than that, it'll just help us continue to do the work that we do. You can do that by going to vox.com/memberships. And thanks again.